little bit of an opening statement, a lot of acknowledgments to start. So please bear with me. I think you'll understand under the circumstance. Really, we want to start out by remembering Jerry Sloan, Doug Burrell, and Mark Eaton. They embodied what our organization stood for, and were legends, and we miss them. Next, congratulations to the Clippers. They played a fantastic series and beat us fair and square, overcame significant adversity, and so their performance was admirable. And then the last thing that we would say to each of you guys, as we always do, want to thank you guys as being the median to our fans. You guys have been more than fair to us. We recognize the sacrifices that you made during this COVID window. Andy, your articles on COVID made us all more educated and aware. So thanks for all of you as much as anything. So Justin, I don't know if you have anything.
Just to echo what Dennis has said, especially in remembering some of our legends with Mark, Jerry, and Doug. Obviously, a lot of circumstances going into this year and a lot of challenges for all of us, including you guys in media. And thank you very much for your work. But I do echo Dennis's comments.
And we're open for questions.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started with Eric Walden, Salt Lake Tribune.
Hey guys, thanks to both of you for taking the time. We appreciate it. This is a question for either or both of you. Just kind of in the aftermath of how, Game 6 went and the series went, I guess, how do you proceed in terms of balancing, reaction to what happened versus maybe overreacting to it? I guess, how much change do you feel like is necessary to address specific roster construction concerns going forward?
Yeah, Eric, I think you hit a key point. Obviously, you don't want to equate a series death to or a series loss to a death, but there are certainly, stages of griefs and postmortems and really, as much as anything, while there's no question there's collective disappointment, hurt. There's also locker room last night, bus, plane, getting together this morning. There's a lot of gratitude. So I think what you said is really key. Obviously, we err towards continuity. I think that served us really well this year, especially with shortened off seasons. And part of the program that we've built is having a coaching staff, a development staff, a health performance staff that really believes in players that are inherently positive. And it's been a similar, Eric, here as my years in San Antonio and when we had more veteran teams in Houston. We kind of have a second, third year phenomenon where guys get better in their second and third years. There's a lot of evidence to that. And we obviously play a specific style. And the fact that our coaches are so positive with our guys. So I think the natural bent is grass isn't always greener. And then obviously we have to go through draft, free agency, de facto trade season, in both of those draft and free agency seasons, and see what's available to us, see what's not, and then make those decisions. But it's not lost on us the historic season that we had, and you certainly have to evaluate the playoffs. I think we have to evaluate the playoffs under the lens of, we wore down physically. And so, yeah, I think we'll take a collective deep breath. Justin and I, the management scouting team, are quickly heading to Chicago tomorrow to start working on draft preparations in particular. So I know that's a long-winded answer. I don't know if I got everything that you're looking for there, but that's at least where I'm at this point in time. Justin?
Just what Dennis had said is in terms of a collective deep breath, and we've got a period of time here. Also, with Ryan and his first year of ownership to go through this off-season process. So we need to get with him and give him a download and get everybody, get all of their thoughts after a few days here. And then, while we're constantly in the front office, continuing to plan for the draft and free agency, regardless of when or if we get eliminated, but getting everybody else after they've had a little bit of a break here to talk, and then what's next.
Okay, next up, Tony Jones, The Athletic.
This is for both Justin and Dennis. The building of a NBA contender is often not linear, but it's often one of where you guys have to take steps. There are a lot of few champions have gone from 1 to 100, so to speak. So how do you guys made a leap from going from a good regular season team to being a great regular season team, and you're a good playoff team, but how do you make that leap from being now a good playoff team to being a great playoff team?
Justin, why don't you start?
Thanks, Tony. It's good to see your face, part of it anyway. There we go. It's a good question, Tony. I think, it's no team, evolves at the same pace or style. It's a combination of a bunch of different factors. And what we try to do is put the best players, coaches, health performance staff in place and have them go out. And then there's a large part of things that may not be in our control, or things that we have to continually learn about ourselves and adjust to, which is what off seasons are for, and sometimes in season. So you may not love the answer, Tony, but the blueprint of trying to go from good to great, as we've talked about before, is hard and complicated. Doesn't mean it, but that's what we strive for. And based on what opportunities come in off seasons and opportunities to try and get better, because that's the goal, and eventually be the last team standing. Part of that's also good fortune and a unique year with COVID and health, and largely remained healthy for, not as an excuse, but these are things that have to go. You have to have some good fortune too. For a large part of the 6-7 months, we had been healthy, and it caught up to us at the end and needed to perform, and we didn't get it done. So that will go into the calculation as we, do our download for what happened, all the good and the things to improve on this season.
Yeah, I think as much as anything, Tony, just good, honest, sober assessments that, we'll keep internal. As you guys know, here we protect players, protect coaches, protect staff. It's just been a long Jazz tradition. And so, but, try to be internally just brutally honest, where we might have fallen short, had opportunities, didn't take advantage of them, didn't have opportunities. Why didn't we have those opportunities? So we do a fairly comprehensive review from A to Z. Luckily, Ryan has wanted to continue that process that was an edict by the Millers when I got here 9 years ago. So I think that's relatively one of our strengths is we're honest with ourselves, and sometimes the adjustments can be internal and rather subtle. A few things that, as an example, that Quinn tactically did on the break are from an offensive rebounding standpoint, internal improvement just 0.2% here, 1% there. And then there's obviously free agency, draft, trade things that we need to analyze. And we take verbatim notes, Tony, on every meeting. So it gives us a chance to honestly look at ourselves and, evaluate, what we did well, what we got lucky on, what we did poorly. And we'll do that, as always, in a confidential way, but rest assured, a comprehensive way as well.
Next up, Sarah Todd, Deseret News.
Hey guys, this will be for both of you, and sort of a two-part question. As you said, injuries were a huge part of how this series and season ended, with both Donovan and Mike going through stuff. Do you think that one, that gave you an opportunity to, properly evaluate and distinguish specific things that you'll be able to identify going forward that you're going to need? And then two, you guys have said in the past, that you were going to go after shooters, and you went and did that a couple of years ago. And then now heading into this season, are there things that you have identified that you need to go after in this offseason?
Yeah, sure. Both of them terrific questions. And it actually leads me into something that I wrote down and is really important to say. One, we really appreciate Mike Conley attempting to play last night. As he mentioned, there was some, just some struggles on return to play. And we tried to, as you guys know, our health performance staff is, we never, from an ownership, management, coaching level, ever put any pressure on a guy's got to play. I saw, as an example, Pop do it several times where in playoff series that the players weren't going to play, even if it was at the detriment of the result. And obviously, we treated Mike with great patience, care, kid gloves. And then ultimately, as most of you know, the players participate kind of in the return to play process, and he really wanted to play given the stakes. And as much as anything, as all of you know, he's first class in every way. And it was in my opinion, a very notable and noble attempt. It really was. And then same thing for Don. Jeff Van Gundy had a great quote on NBA players, because so much of the season is more about survival than it is necessarily winning any one game. That's why we call it last team standing. Don really, his performance was heroic. The fact that he played his best when his best was needed, and yet it was clear that he was suboptimal, was beyond remarkable. It speaks to his physical talent, his mental toughness, perseverance. You guys saw when he landed. So it's just, in some ways, it will get lost because, we didn't accomplish the goal of being the last team standing, or certainly getting to the finals. But it was a remarkable thing to watch him go through Memphis and the Clippers and play in such a dynamic way when, as he stated, it's clear that he wasn't 100%. So I think when you lose, at a point in time in the regular season, 2 all-star level players, it was notable that we were able to survive and somewhat thrive. I think, Sarah, that came at a cost. Joe was a little fatigued by needing to handle the ball. But we were able to, hang on for a 1 seed. Some of the young players played. Some had good minutes. Biaoni, as an example, had an excellent defensive rating and could be one of the better wing defenders in the league. He was more situational this year. because as Justin mentioned earlier, we were so healthy and relatively 9 deep. If you're saying Mie is our 10th guy, being situational. And then, so there's always evaluations on adding shooting, right? And then at what cost? And for us, we got really fortunate because we added shooting systematically, really over a 3-year period, starting with when we couldn't keep up with Golden State. And then we were able to get a few guys better. George Niang had a terrific defensive year, as an example. So while you think of him as a sniper, you go look at the video, you go look at its defensive metrics, his overall value to us was really high. And when he wasn't making shots early in the season, it was more so defensively. So again, the internal improvement thing going on, the second, third year phenomenon that we've had with our players. And then you're obviously looking at how we ended. I don't think you over-index and make every decision based upon the Clippers going small and having some wing athleticism, if you will. But it's certainly a window into playoff basketball. Things get reduced, rotations get reduced. What happens? And again, you put that in the context of what happened with the team, what Mike was dealing with, what Don was dealing with, what Quinn's thoughts were, when the rotations shrink. Those are all part of the equation that you're basically, Rudy Tomjanovich used to say this, and it's really true. You're basically removing the clouds, whether they're self-imposed clouds or media narratives or, a false evaluation. And then trying to, once you get to the truth, trying to order the truth and the level of priority, and then see what you can address. There's many times, as an example, I think I've said this a few times, some things you want to do in the draft or trade or for your agency, and you can't execute on them. So some of it's, what's available to you as well. Justin, anything you would add to that?
I just emphasize that the order of truth is part of our process of, evaluating this. And Sarah, it's, obviously it's less than 24 hours since the elimination, and we can go point to, back to Tony's question of going from good to great regular season team. And obviously there's things that we need to evaluate. The translation into the playoffs with certain matchups after finishing the season top 5 in both offense and defensive efficiency. So where does that apply in a relatively short series as opposed to a 72, 82 game season? And where the league is continuing to evolve with players and where those opportunities are. So I think it's too early to say, to just make flat, hey, we need to do this. A couple years ago when we knew about the shooting part, we also saw the league moving this way, and it was very, very clear. Now it's going to be a little bit more nuanced because we're closer. And obviously weighing, as Dennis said, with injuries and circumstances and things like that, and valuing it properly on the path to go forward.
Here's another thing that I think would be interesting for all of you to think about. We're going into our general manager meetings on Monday in Chicago, and plenty of people have written about it. There's a big emphasis on, we've tried to protect the shooters, but the league has become so good and skilled and tricking the officials on when players jump in to the defensive path. And is the league truly going to give the defensives more tools to work with, from that standpoint? So we're being made aware of what could be a rule change, but it could be just a rule emphasis. So we're trying to evaluate that. I think that's one thing that all year long we were excellent. I drove a lot of our margin. We were low foul. And then there were a few times in Memphis and LA Clippers whether it be in rotation, body position, hand position, we just weren't quite as disciplined. And so, those are things that the coaches will address and did address with the players. And then it's also something that we've got to evaluate. We do a pretty good job of the officiating process, taking that data, really spending a lot of time with the rules, trying to teach technique to the rules as well. So that's a piece as well that will factor into all of our evaluations there.
Next up, Andy Larson, Salt Lake Tribune.
Hey, for Dennis, just I guess with Mike Conley's upcoming free agency, how will you approach that? Do you want him back? And straightforwardly, do you have enough money to re-sign him, given that it will push you into the luxury tax to a large degree and you'll have to pay many multiples of what that salary would be?
Yeah, it's an obvious question, Andy. A few things. Justin said it earlier. This is Ryan's first season and then off season, and he's going through it like we are, Andy, where, there's a sense of pride and accomplishment and some historic things, whether it be the 3-point shooting, first seed ever, and then the realities that we didn't accomplish our final goal. And obviously, our ownership support, the transition, the succession plan has been amazing to watch. Gail, Greg, Steve Miller, Steve Starks, Ryan Smith, Ryan Sweeney, Michael Cannon Brooks, now Dwayne Wade. They've really been amazing when transitions, are tough. So Ryan trusted us, and he made a huge financial commitment this offseason that you've alluded to. And there's always, the next season in multi-year planning. I'm limited, Andy, on what I can say, because Mike now is technically a free agent, but from our perspective, who he is, what he stands for, the speed, skill, experience, intelligence, character, poise that he adds to the group. Those are all, we just pinch ourselves that it's an honor to have him part of the program. And then you guys know the deal. I can't speak to, he's got to go vet his market. We've got to go and draft and, as soon as it's legal, have free agent conversations. And then Mike and his dad, who's one of his agents, Stephen Human, acts in advisement as well. We have good relationships there. We'll have just a real honest conversation and see, if you can make a marriage work. But couldn't be more proud of him. And again, last night, what he attempted, I think it goes with that. I know I can speak for Ryan Smith on that one. He really appreciated Mike giving it a shot. And look, both things can be true. We can be just rocked emotionally for a lot of different reasons, and yet be eminently proud that, first seed, first time Mike Conley got to be an all-star, Andy, when he, as deserved it before, but the West is brutal. So I think we can take some pride and solace in some individual and team accomplishments, even though the ultimate goal wasn't finished.
Okay, next up, David James, KUTV.
For both of you, I'm curious, as you watch the team play, how you evaluate the group's ability to just defend their man and stay in front of the guy who's got the ball in front of him.
Yeah, Quinn alluded to that last night, DJ. No hiding from that fact that we did a really good job all year long with that. Some guys, as an example, Mike Conley up at the top of the key easily, it was a little bit like Howell Neto, and it showed up in Howell's video and metrics, were quite elusive when picks come, and the in and around the gauntlet, superior. And we were able to find that Mike was quite adept at that, and a certain extent, lost those capabilities. Even though people may think that he's smaller, you go look at the video, the metrics, it matched what, at least I was seeing with my eyes. And then you have Royce O'Neal, who I believe when it's free throw line and below, and there's strength involved and holding a line, is one of the better defenders in the league. And then you go into Donovan having capabilities, but his load offensively is so large, and he obviously didn't play 6-7 weeks prior to coming back in the Memphis series. So, but there's no question, there was a few angles, especially when Ty Lue decided to play smaller and switch everything defensively, but give them more space, speed, and skill out on the court. It created some odd coverage angles for everybody, and that's one of the reasons why they get to continue on to the Western Conference Finals, and our season was ended. Is that a trend? Is it something that we can mitigate, whether it be with tactics, strategy, technique, or ultimately change in personnel? Those are the questions that we'll be asking ourselves as we move to the draft combine. And we need to let Quinn and the coaches get away. Them and health performance, it was remarkable what they did. Really, if you think about it, when you include the bubble, the short off season, basically combining 2 seasons into one. Our health performance staff got the performance staff of the year coming out of the bubble. Quinn was a coach of the year candidate, and very well deserved in our opinion. And so the coach's effort, the health performance effort, I don't mind sharing this as an example. We got accommodations from the league, and recognized that we were by far the most the COVID, most compliant COVID team in the league, meaning testing, vaccinations, all the tracking devices. And that's a credit to Barnett Frank and all the health performance staff. And so, all those things go back into the evaluation, David, but the most honest assessment is there's no question when the Clippers went small and more skilled that our containment needed to be at a higher level. It created a trigger inside of which we gave up a lot of corner threes, and that's not something that we typically do and believe in. And that wasn't the only thing that ended our season, but it certainly didn't help us advance.
Ben Anderson, KSLSports.com.
Dennis and Justin, you actually alluded to this a moment ago when you were talking about how you recognized the league was trending towards shooting. On the other end, for Rudy Gobert, because his defense is so integral to what you guys do scheme-wise on that side of the ball, what direction is the league heading defensively, and how do you make sure that he's not overwhelmed like he was last night?
Yeah, so a few things. One, and this is no excuse, but when Rudy took that fall, there was a pretty big contusion, and he went back in the tunnel, and a little bit like Mike Conley, Ben, a little bit or a lot like Donovan, he's like, you guys are going to have to tackle me to not let me go back in, and that was admirable. But his mobility was compromised. Luckily, with all the testing and imaging, he's going to be fine. But that was real. We felt it. but you weren't gonna. There was no way Quinn or me or Mike Elliott or anybody else was going to be able to hold him back from last night. And look, a lot of what we evaluate is what you replicate, what you can replicate. And Rudy's, as you guys know, is great at the rim, and subsequently we can be great defending the 3-point line, and we can defend without fouling, and all those things we didn't do as well. And much of what happened, you just have to credit Terrence Mann, Paul George, Marcus Morris. Thought Reggie Jackson played terrific. And, the Clippers caught on to a scheme and some matchups. And there's no question our teams were close enough that whether it be injury or foul trouble or a matchup or a scheme, those things could, swing a series. And it did. We took the first two and played really well. And then the Clippers, I think it's the first team ever that came back from 2-0. And you guys probably know the math last night, down 25, come back. I think it's historic. So we were historically good in some ways, and then some history ended us. And but Rudy Gobert is one of the best players in the league, and we're glad to have him on our side.
Ryan Miller, KSL.
Yeah, Dennis, you've mentioned Ryan Smith a few times. How much has his involvement changed the process for you guys, and how much more hands-on is he compared to the Millers?
If you don't mind, Ryan, I'd rather stay away from comparisons. It's if you have children,
fair enough.
If you have children, it's not a fruitful thing to do. You just love your kids at where they're at. Same thing. I've been really lucky. Houston, San Antonio, here. Regime changes. Look, it's just part of the league. I've gone from Randy Rigby to Steve Starks to Jim Olson as president partners, and all of them, not good men, great men, but they're going to have different managerial styles. And I think, with Ryan, he's obviously young, brilliant, energetic, bunch of questions. And look, he spent a lot of money to acquire the franchise, and luckily we still have the Millers involved. I didn't mention them as part of the minority ownership, and I think he recognizes a few things that we've done well that are fundamental and tried and true. And then as he gets his footing, it's only natural that a few of his preferences, inclinations will move us operating in certain ways. So he's doing great. And as much as anything, we really appreciate him trusting us to make a few financial commitments that we need to make sure that we're able to retain Jordan Clarkson, bring Derek Favors back, take Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell off the market. That's certainty. And look, in this league, you have to pay for certainty. You have to pay for greatness. You have to pay for continuity. And Ryan did that and listened. And from my perspective and upper management, that's all you can ask. Justin, is there anything you would add that I left out on that?
Just emphasize grateful for his energy and his expertise, and the Millers trusting him, and continuing to make huge inroads into the community and state, just as the Millers did, and in his own way. So we're grateful for him and all the support he's given us.
Follow up from Sarah Todd.
Yeah, this would be for both of you or either of you, whoever wants to take it. You mentioned, Dennis, that the general managers meeting is coming up, and Obviously, we saw a lot of injuries, especially to a lot of high-level players this year. One, is that something that you anticipate being talked about? And then two, going off of that, with the Olympics coming up, does it concern you that in another shortened season that you're going to have players that are going to be taking part in those competitions?
Yes, the health performance thing, we can control what we can control. As an example, some of these stats you guys might not have available to you, but I'll give you a few. It's really, Mike Elliott, the staff he's built, I think since 14-15, we're first in the league in fewest foot and ankle injuries. And then, what happens at Indiana was no one's fault. And that was a tough deal for Donovan. It really was a tough deal for us. And so, because it was an episode, I think we're last 3 years, second in fewest games missed due to injury, third in dollars lost due to injury, which is a huge metric. Look, there's a few teams that their playoffs were wrecked for health or didn't get to the playoffs because of health. And so it's a really important thing. I think the league's heart on this matter is really pure. It is. It's amazing being on board of governor calls, general manager calls, task force calls. We've been Zoomed to death. And that's why I take pride in being, our staff being recognized as the most compliant team in the league, because this was a lot, guys. It was a lot. And it because, you guys made sacrifices inside of COVID and your nature of your business changed. With that said, in my opinion, was there a magic number out there that was better than 72 inside of this condensed period? I think there was, but you also, there's finances involved. Players, want to make as much money in a short window as possible. And so all of that was collectively bargained. So in my opinion, if that's debated on maximizing revenue versus player health, I think that's healthy. And rest assured, Sarah, those things are talked about, intimately and debated. And, by and large, every board of governor call that I've taken part in, player health is really paramount. Yet you're going to have disagreements. Competition is always going to bring some level of conflict and disagreements. And for this issue, there's it's no different. You're going to have star players get hurt, and other star players are going to note it, and then the league is going to send out their PR statement, right? And then everybody debates it. And that's why you guys and us have a job. But rest assured, this is an area that we deeply, deeply study. And can you tell me the second part of the question besides the GM? Because I know I ran on there.
Yeah, with Olympic competition coming up and another shortened off season.
Yeah. So Houston, San Antonio here, I've been a great beneficiary of the international player, the domestic player that, like Donovan, that's great enough to be invited to world championships and Olympics. And so I don't want to be hypocritical, and saying I don't want them to participate, but there's no question we're all holding our breath that nothing happens, that if something does happen, that the national team appropriately reports it to us. We sent a lot of personnel out to the players' training sites, make sure that all the training specifications are being met, and that players' individual needs. I think Rudy, Donovan, Joe Ingles, other national team players that we've had have really appreciated extra effort because it interrupts the off season for the health performance staff. But we hope to support the player in that way. But yeah, there's no question. There's not a general manager or a head coach in the league that's can't say that he's holding his breath. And then there's just overall fatigue, right? But yet, if a player's healthy, it's been collectively bargained between the NBA, USA Basketball, and the FIBA agreement, and he wants to play in the Olympics. Who am I to stand in his way? You know, we want that for our guys. You just hope that that they're not tired, and certainly that they don't have a traumatic injury.
Last question's a follow-up from Andy Larson.
Hey guys, for either one of you wants to take this, but I think it's fair to say over the last year, you guys kind of focused on doubling down on the way that you play and acquiring or reacquiring guys with size, rim protection, even shooting at the deadline. Do you regret not getting more versatility on this roster to deal with threats like the Clippers presented? And, in that way, do you want to add more versatility to this roster in the offseason to come?
I think we'll have to think about it, Andy. Again, we're not going to comment on and never separate from a individual player, whether it be the player or the transaction. We win and lose together. But yeah, certainly two-way players are very, very important to NBA clubs, and that's why they come at really high premiums. Justin, I don't know if you would add anything to that.
Totally. That's, it's part of the team building process, Andy. I appreciate you asking the question.